So I think we shall begin then if everyone's ready. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world today, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christian, and I'm joined today by my colleague Carbon, who will be stepping in during the question and answer session, as well as by a small panel of great guest speakers. And after this brief introduction, we'll pass the floor to the speakers and then finish with a question and answer session. So we encourage the audience to ask their questions in the chat box on YouTube Live, or if you're joining us via Zoom and the chat there at any point during the webinar, and we'll be sure to answer those. So this webinar, for a brief introduction, is the third in our webinar series on sustainable private sector practices. And our aim with these webinars is to share with you, all the innovative and impactful work that's being done by individuals who are leaders in their fields. And with this, we hope to, inspire and transfer ideas or best practices to you. As well as to emphasize the positive role that the private sector plays in sustainable development and to the 17 Global Sustainable Development Goals. And in our first webinar, we covered social business and social entrepreneurship. In our second webinar, we covered sustainable food systems and hospitality, waste reduction in industry, and green bonds. Today, we are joined by Flavia from the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP for short, Sustainable Development, which is based in Thailand. And we're also joined by Nidhi from S4S Technologies, based in India, who will discuss her work as well. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Flavia Reale. Flavia is currently an environmental management officer with ESCAP. She has been an environmental specialist now for over 10 years, over 10 years of experience in the environmental field. And she leads the greening efforts of ESCAP, helping the organization ban all single-use plastics in its catering operations and reduce waste, energy, and water consumption significantly, over the last 3 years. She is also actively involved in the internal innovation efforts to rethink practices and processes, boost efficiency, and increase the impact of the UN's work. So, Flavia is one of the great change makers, I think, at ESCAP, and really has a lot of outcomes to prove her work and, the UN's commitment to greening the world and a sustainable future. So I will now pass the baton, so to speak, to Flavia, and she will share with you all her works.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'll be sharing now my presentation. Give me just 1 second. And I hope you can see my screen.
It's coming up well.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone, once again. My name is Flavia Reale, as introduced by Christian, and I'm working with the United Nations Economic and Social Commission in Asia and the Pacific. And we are working based at the headquarters in Bangkok. So today I'll be sharing with you our experience in greening our work, because we know that all sectors of the society play a key role. So perhaps you're in the private sector, in the academia, or other sectors, all of us can contribute to climate action. So the goal here is also to share our experience, but also to show to you what could be the benefits of this action. And as mentioned, climate change is a planet crisis. So it's very important that we all join hands to reduce climate change and prevent it. Now, the first question that we can ask, okay, besides the environmental goals, what's in it for any organization, or at least most organizations? Well, first of all, taking climate action means enhancing your credibility and reputation, which very often is also associated with attracting more investments and in some cases also reducing your costs. Think of energy bills. That's a very practical example. But it also may reduce your exposure to risks. And so perhaps you reduce your cost of insurance or your shares value goes up in the stock market. These are all examples that are very relevant for an organization to take action on climate change. But there's also a last element that is equally important, which is boosting your staff morale and commitment. That's important because now more than ever, new generations of employees are looking for purpose. They want to join organizations because they share the values. And staff retention is a challenge with this market mobility. So following climate action, taking climate action is certainly a way also to boost that morale. Now, similarly to any other sector, the UN has decided to take action on climate for several reasons. And among these is, first of all, because of course we need to lead by example. We need to show member states, private sectors, all sectors of the society that actions in line with the sustainable development goals are implementable, are possible. We also need to have reputational gains to be strengthened. And we also have policy frameworks that we need to follow in order to, across the UN, in order to comply with our own internal environmental policies. And last but not least, financial savings. In the world budget crisis, we absolutely need to be able to run our facilities and operations more efficiently, also from a cost perspective. When you think of your work environment, you might wonder, okay, how does my work contribute to climate change? Well, there's many ways. It really depends on the area in which you're working. But you might be generating waste. You might be consuming energy, perhaps a lot of energy if you have a factory. You might be consuming water and also paper. You might be traveling around the world using different means of transport or even local transport with your local fleet and vehicles. And you might be having catering operations that contribute to all those aspects. And perhaps you host meetings, and so you have a hotel, for example. That's, again, all areas that will contribute to climate change in some or other ways. And that's what we did for the UN in Bangkok. We basically established what it's called an environmental management system. What is it? It is a system that allows you to understand what are the environmental impacts associated with your operations. Once you do that, you continuously monitor that the actions you have planned are actually bringing to the results you hope to achieve. For us, we focused on 5 main aspects: waste, energy, water, meetings, and travel. But there is a 6th one that is equally important and supports all the others, which is staff awareness. That's why so much of our work has been focusing on raising awareness of our personnel, but also of external parties. And that's why also I'm here today with all of you. We have a very large compound. Imagine 2,000 UN staff in a very large compound with, before COVID, about 27,000 visitors every year. So this gives you a volume of potential waste that we might have been generating. This is why when we started our environmental work, we said, okay, what is it that we can do differently to reduce our environmental impacts associated with waste? We checked our waste and we understood that single-use paper cups, plastics were an issue. So we banned them all in our compound, in our catering outlets, so that we can run operations that are based on deposit systems, ceramic cups. And by doing so, we have avoided 9 tons of waste every year, which is over 1 million single-use catering items since 2018. But we also look beyond prevention, which is key. we looked at the way we manage our waste, and we realized that we wanted to recycle more. We have set up recycling bins centralized in every working area. We removed individual bins from our co-workers, and we made sure that there was some sorting at source. Why was it so important? Because by doing so, we have been able to dedicate more time in the final sorting of our waste and recycle more. We mapped out the recycling options available locally to make sure that most of our waste is recyclable. And thanks to that, we have been able in 2020 to go beyond 50% recycling in our facilities. I've listed here a few suggestions for you, but of course, some may not apply depending on the type of business you are involved with. First of all, there could be nothing can start without data. You need to understand what is your main source of waste. You need to understand how your waste is characterized. So that's a key element. Once you know that, you can take informed decisions and prevent waste. You can perhaps change the way your procurement rules are written. So when you have a contract with a provider, you include greening considerations such as packaging reduction or types of packaging you would accept and types you would not accept, and so on. You also need to do a local market research to understand how you can recycle more. And certainly recycling bins are key to make sorting of waste at source possible, because you need to prevent waste contamination so that waste can be afterwards recycled. Reducing paper use in an office environment, for example, it's key. And the best way to do that is, first of all, installing network printers where you can monitor how many prints your teams are performing, and you can then launch campaigns and monitor performance. For energy, I'm happy to share some of our data just to give you a feel. Thanks to our energy optimization measures, we have been able to save 14% energy in 3 years with no facilities upgrades, just by changing our operation hours, switching to LED lighting, switching off lights automatically during lunchtime, installing some extra solar panels, and also we have been able to go 100% renewable energy powered in 2020, thanks to the purchase of international renewable energy credits. This you can find locally on your local market, and these are certified, so you can compensate whatever you cannot avoid. Now, in 3 years, I think it's important to share also financial figures. We have been able to save $276,000. And that's an important figure because also for all of you, it's about the sustainability, also financial sustainability of your business. So all the elements I've mentioned could be replicated in other settings. You can also consider raising your office temperature. That could certainly be could decrease your energy consumption. But start always with this mindset: data first. Collect data, analyze your bills, and then take decisions. For water, we managed to achieve 18% water savings, but you might be curious, how did we do it? In our specific system, water is associated with energy because we use cooling towers. By becoming more energy efficient, we have been able to cut down on our water usage. And we also recycle 8% of our water for gardening purposes. If you wonder how much is 27,000 cubic meters saved in 3 years, it's like 13.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's the volume of water we have saved. So once again, a suggestion for all of you is to start with data. Look at what you could be doing, perhaps improving your toilet fixtures. In some cases, it's good to get a technical expert on site. Sometimes you can do it also on your own, identifying what are easy or low-hanging fruits to reduce your water consumption. In terms of travel, many of you might be having either personnel coming to your facilities in the COVID time frame, perhaps a little bit less. There's a lot of home working, but you might also be traveling for work, which means missions using air travel or local travel. Well, we have been trying to monitor all this and reduce our travel emissions. We cut on our fuel usage, on our air travel, and we also encourage colleagues to have a greener commute. How did we do that? We shared information about public transportation, e-vehicles, and all options that were available to them. But we also use awareness campaigns with videos, including our leadership, using a good sense of humor. I can share, based on our experience, that's very successful. We also set targets, and that's so important for the environmental work, to set targets for air travel reduction so that you can really know what you're aiming at and measure your progress against that target. I would also say that we encourage to fly economy, because economy has a lower footprint than business class. You might be wondering why. It's only because business class occupies twice as much space. Therefore, they are responsible for more carbon emissions per flight. So we encourage everyone to travel economy as much as possible. And of course, in a COVID timeframe, that's very common, as we are doing it right now. But before COVID, having online meetings was often rather rare, rather than the norm. So we hope that even after COVID, we will manage to keep a good balance and have more online meetings so that we reduce the environmental impacts of travel. Meetings are key, and in what we have done with our meetings is that we measure their footprint for all our intergovernmental meetings that are our main meetings. We measure their footprint and then we offset their emissions so that they are climate neutral. We do this, but we also complement that with other sustainability actions. For example, all our meetings are single-use catering items free. We go paper smart, and we also propose low carbon menus, either for the coffee breaks, which means with no meat, or in some cases, even the full cocktail menu is fully vegetarian and vegan. This is because we try to promote also more sustainable lifestyle. Now, projects, you might be having a consultancy company that has projects in the region. In that case, you can look into other aspects, such as including environmental considerations when developing the project, and also in the key performance indicators. Or maybe when you're developing a new project, a product for your company, you can look at the full life cycle of the product. But also, you may plan to minimize travel by using also online meetings, and perhaps using electric vehicles when you are planning missions or for your fleet. This depends a lot on the country in which you're based. But you can also include offsetting budgets so that you make sure that you measure the footprint of your project and then you always offset their emissions. And then you can look at donating the furniture, buying sustainable furniture, so that you make sure that your project is fully integrated with environmental considerations. Lastly, offsetting. I've mentioned this word a few times, but for those of you that are not familiar with offsetting, what does it mean? Offsetting means that you calculate the emissions of your organization, for example, and then you purchase the same amount of tons of CO2 credits from other projects around the world that have been certified for reducing their emissions by that amount. By doing so, imagine it as a scale, you go back to a net zero balance. And this you do it with all the emissions you could not reduce because the effort needs to stay on reduction. So The first advice will be start measuring your emissions. It is not difficult, it is possible. Now, many travel agents also give you the amount of CO2 associated with your travel, for example, but you have also online tools that you can use for that. And measure your energy, water waste, and refrigerant emissions. Refrigerants are very important because they have a strong impact on the greenhouse gas emissions. Us at ESCAP, since 2017, we have been doing this offsetting every year. And we have been reporting and measuring our emissions since 2009. So it's really important to start taking data to then be able to take action. Lastly, it's about awareness. All of this, depending on the size of your organization, needs to be done together with your colleagues. So awareness is crucial. We have been releasing externally published reports on environmental sustainability every year since 2018. And we hold sessions with all our colleagues to brief them on the progress on the project. We release homemade videos to raise awareness on how to recycle more, how to cycle to work, and other elements. But we are also right now developing a UN staff vegetable garden for people to get more connected with nature and grow their own vegetables. So based on our experience, of course, in just 20 minutes, it's difficult to share all the lessons learned. But in a nutshell, in your organization, to make this work, look at leadership. Ensure that some senior managers are involved as champions in this work. And then engage your colleagues to create a driving force, a driving team that is able to bring this work forward. Base every decision on data. No gut feeling, just based it on data. You might be surprised when you look at your energy bills or when you look at your waste to understand what is the main source of pollution. So base it on data and monitor performance. You need to monitor constantly to be able to measure progress. In terms of scope, there are things that you cannot control. So as a first step, focus on what you can control or at least influence. This will show the most impact of your environmental action. And in terms of ambition, be ambitious. Set targets that are ambitious but achievable, and set action plans to achieve them. And then lastly, as said in the previous slide, awareness campaigns are important. Keep colleagues informed and engaged. They are part of this change, and make them proud to be part of your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Flavia. And over 1 million catering items prevented. That's a mind-boggling number. I'm just trying to imagine counting to 1 million. And I really like your point. Not just the financial savings, the cost perspective of your work, but this idea of a new generation of workers who are seeking purpose. I think that kind of highlights the different dimensions that exist for everything, and also the diligence that you use in your work, setting targets and pursuing data, but also what you've managed to accomplish even without facilities upgrades. These electricity savings are quite impressive. So thank you very much for being very generous with your time today to share these lessons with us today. And so thank you again. And we'll now introduce then our second speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce Nidhi Pant from S4S Technologies. Nidhi is the co-founder of S4S Technologies and is also the winner of the Women Transforming India Awards, which were awarded by Niti Aayog in collaboration with the United Nations. She was also listed in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. Nidhi holds a bachelor's in chemical technology from the Institute of Chemical Technology in India. So Nidhi, do you have a presentation to share?
Yes, I'm just starting to share now.
Great, thank you. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Flavia. I think your work is very incredible, and I did get to learn so much from the work that you have been doing, and it's really inspiring. Hello, everyone. I would like to introduce myself and my organization, which stands for Science. S for S stands for Science for Society. We provide scientific solutions to some of the pressing challenges faced in the agriculture economy and tackle the problem of food wastage at multiple points. So, from your farm to your marketplace, there are a lot of losses that happen in the entire supply chain, and this is due to lack of infrastructure at the farm level, distant markets, uh, the lack of using technologies which are more environmental friendly and relying a lot more on cold storage in a developing country like India, where electricity itself is a challenge. Depending on cold storage solution which require a recurring amount of energy is something which is challenging for most of the smallholder farmers who account for 60% of farming farmers in India is challenging. At S4S, we convert these farm losses to value added products through intervention of sustainable technologies at the farm level. At the core of what we do lies three things. One is decentralizing everything. Second is being energy efficient, so processing where we produce. And the third part of it is capturing value so that this becomes overall a more financially sustainable solution as well. We saw the challenges that if you go to any local market in India, wherever the farmers actually bring their produce, this is how typically it looks like. And 40% of food is wasted in the entire supply chain, which is more than $17 billion annually. And this is not only the problem in developing countries, this is due to broken supply chain, but in more developed countries, the wastage is similar, but not probably at the supply chain level, but more at the end consumer level. This was what we see at any time. If you go in the morning in a regular marketplace, this is what you would see. And this is primarily due to the perishable nature of the produce. And secondly, because from the time it is harvested to the time it reaches market, the distance is huge. The infrastructure to store is not present, and the farmer is also of the pressed with its time, that they also want instant money. So they don't have any, they don't want to invest more in storing these solutions, also using cold storage or other technologies. So we saw this problem which was happening at uh, in the market, in mandi as it's called in India. And at the same time, what we saw was that the land was infertile. Uh, every 30 minutes, one farmer commits suicide in India. At the same time, women are the ones who are working at the farm gate. Most of the men are migrating to cities in search of other alternate income options, and the money is not flowing uh, in the household, as they are spending most of it on alcohol or on any other leisure activities. And that's where we decided to solve both environmental and social problem present, and integrating it using our patented technology, which is the solar dehydrator. It's a 10 by 6 feet machine. What it does is, so we create these farm systems at the farm gate for farmers to dry the B and C grade produce. What is the B and C grade produce? It is cosmetically defected, but it holds the same nutritional value. This B and C grade produce, when the farmers sort and grade their produce, they sell the A grade in the market, and the B and C grade produce, for which a lot of times the transportation cost is also higher than the value of the produce. So they would in net not get anything in the market, and hence would dump everything at the market sometimes. The prices are very much fluctuating of the food that is being produced. So we set up these kind of system at the farm gate for individual farmers, where they can use their surplus produce to dry any kind of commodity except milk and watermelon. So you can whether it's fruits, vegetable, pulses, meat, uh, grains, spices, anything is something that you can dry in 6 to 8 hours. How is it better than the existing technology? If you see any competing technology which is either cold chain or frozen, they're trying to maintain the same form but using this more and more electricity, making it more unsustainable. Second is that if you use sun drying, a lot of times the drying is inconsistent. It requires more it requires a longer period of time. There is microbial growth that's happening in the produce, and it does not have any shelf life. And the third way is always using preservatives or retorting, or putting the produce at very high temperature, canning it, which is more popular in more western communities. What we decided that why we should go for drying or dehydration is that, first is it is something that does not, you are using the same energy that you use for processing the produce for preservation. So your energy for preservation is same as your energy for processing. So you're saving on two-step process and combining into one. That secondly, it can also handle wide variety of material. Is just take 6 to 8 hours to use the produce here and increase the shelf life without addition of any preservatives of chemical to 1 year. So if for 1 year the farmers also, or anyone in the rural community, has food security for, they initially used to eat rice or any other more commoditized products which just are carbohydrates, just that give them just energy. But the micronutrients that are present in fruits and vegetables is what they get using this. So it ensures food security for entire year for the bottom of the pyramid population. Third is that it maintains all the nutrition. There is a lot of conception that using drying, there is nutrients that would be lost with water, which are water soluble. But this concentrates the content. We have done experiments with of 100 women with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well as National Institute of Nutrition, and seen 1 point increase in the hemoglobin content of the women when they are consuming these products, which are just dehydrated using the technology. Ours is a more end-to-end model. We realize that only for anything to be sustainable or to be climate positive, it also needs to be financially sustainable. So we definitely believe that for financial inclusion, market inclusion is most necessary. So it starts with market inclusion, and then any technology is more and more adoptable to see what exactly it changes in the entire supply chain. What is the economics? Who's going to pay for it? Food wastage was definitely is really a very pressing problem. But in the supply chain, no one was ready to pay for whatever you are going to save. So that's where we devised an end-to-end model, where we now only don't provide the machine, but we also provide the food from the machine. So we buy back whatever the most of these women that we transform from farmers to micro entrepreneurs, they do multiple batches a day using the machine. and whatever they use, some for their own consumption, and whatever is surplus is what they provide us. So we buy back from them onion, ginger, garlic. These are some of the specialized products which then go as food ingredients in packaged food for packaged food companies, and also to hotel, restaurant, catering industry. uh, Wastage is something, wastage and being energy efficient is what we focus in the entire supply chain. So if you focus on the customer end, which is the food and beverage industry, there is also what we preserve for them. There is no wastage because there is no pre-processing. These are just ready to use products. So they don't have to cut onions, they don't have to chop anything. There's no waste happening at that point of time, because all of this is now transferred in a decentralized manner at the farm gate. And all of this is done using latent time of these women who are um, taking care of their household, and this is the most viable employment opportunity for them as well. So first is providing them technologies, second is providing market linkage, and third is making it financially sustainable, so that the money directly goes in the hand of women and she has better decision making, better participation in the entire household, as she is now the breadwinner of the family. We work with more than 700 customers, and supplying more, who are making more than 10 million meals per day. So using our products, we serve over 10 million customers. We do a lot of exports as well, and save annually 13,500 tons of food from getting wasted. The entire supply chain is positive because of three things. First is we are not transporting water. Whenever you are transporting fresh produce, most of it is water, and you are transporting it from one end to other, making more and more CO2 enter the environment. So we are preventing this as we are processing most of this at the farm gate, and there is 10 to 15 times reduction in the transporting capacity. So you don't there is no CO2 entering the environment. The logistics was also optimized. So you're saving both on cost and also on the energy. Third is that we're using the same energy for processing that is used for preservation at the farm gate. Uh, Anytime you see someone drinking cold water, there's more and more energy that you have put in. I sometimes just don't understand the concept of cold water. And a third is also capturing value at multiple ends, so that the waste is now something which actually delivers value to our supply chain, which is our farmers, and also to our customers. We use traditionally 80% lesser water in the process, and we are also experimenting a lot of it to for cross-border transportation, as you no longer have to transport water. So export is also something with that we are looking at. What I would want to highlight is that in the entire process, it is 6 times that this waste that we are now converting to more value-added products. The farmers get an assured additional income of $100 to $120 per month, which is their pure profit, not their produce, whatever their transaction is for their produce that they always get, but traditionally 6 times more because of the value addition that's happening at the farm gate. So three things that definitely differentiate us from others is that first is we are preventing the food wastage that's happening in the entire supply chain. Second is creating small farm systems since all of and local employment, and making everything energy efficient as well, and making sure that no CO2 is entering the environment. Third is that the money directly goes in the hand of these women in the rural communities, where they are now transformed to micro entrepreneurs. So these are some of the practices that we have followed, being very specifically focused on energy and wastage, and then granularly going upon the CO2, water consumption, landfills, utility that we're doing, packaging in our entire supply chain, breaking it down to more fundamentals that can be that can make us more climate positive. And this is what I would like to share with all of you. And I thank Christian and the team for this opportunity. And thank you for, if you have any questions regarding what we do, I'm very happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, for sharing and for the great presentation. I find the work you do to be, very innovative and, a great case study for applying private sector solutions to, very real and unaddressed social and environmental problems. Bridging, this technology gap, where there's a lack of cold storage, for example. And what also strikes me is just how many of these, the global sustainable development goals that your work, cuts across, like SDG 1 on no poverty, SDG 2 food security, SDG 3 good health, SDG 5 women, empowerment of women, SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production, SDG 13, just so many. And I think that's a testament, to the effectiveness of your model. So, and I also like this, what you highlighted, turning waste into value. And I think that's going to be a very important component, to the future, especially in a more circular economy. So, thank you again for joining us. And if there's any questions, Carbon, are there any questions? Did anyone leave any questions in the?
Yes, I will ask one. So thank you all for your fantastic speech. I learned a lot. And I have a question for our second speaker. So I'm super impressed by this innovative business model you introduced to preserve and recycle food. I'm just curious, as you mentioned, the equipment is solar powered. And I'm wondering, do you encounter technical difficulties? Like, how do you adjust the variability of solar powered techniques in terms of providing energy, as it depends on the local condition, the weather? So do you perceive it as a problem, and how do you overcome that?
Thanks, Kavan. That's a really important question. Yes, it took us 3 years to adjust it. We used 3 modes of heat transfer. That's why it uses both radiation, convection, and conduction. So system is designed in this way where it is not storing energy, but it is capturing what, and most of the work is done to heat the air. So even at a lower solar power, at a lower energy in the environment where it's even a bit more cloudy, is where you can use the, I don't want to go a lot more technical, but just in a layman languages, we've really optimized to just heat the air to bare minimum, because we are removing the water, so the equilibrium needs to be adjusted. The outer air needs to be heated a bit more, and if there's inconsistency in the energy, sometimes it takes longer. That is the only challenge, that apart from some commodities like the ginger or garlic would dry up faster than others like tomato, which has a lot amount of water. So we did some technical experiments to standardize it, so it does work uh, in normal environment also. It does not work during monsoon, but it is not that you require a scorchy heat uh, or an environment which really gets sun for 265 days. Even with a cloudy environment, we have seen it just takes longer. It's just because we are using this heat transfer that actually is more efficient.
Yeah, okay, this is super cool. Thank you for clarifying my question. I think, Christian, you can go ahead with yours.
There's a question for Flavia, actually. So, at the UN compound in Bangkok, where there's so many people, so much data, and also the resources to have this environmental management system. I was wondering what your suggestions would be for maybe small and medium-sized operations that may not have the resources or the know-how to set targets or collect data what your recommendations would be for people in that situation.
Thank you, Christian. Indeed, it may vary significantly also depending on the line of work that you're on. So in general terms, thinking of an office environment, perhaps it's easier to be specific. You can simply look at small changes, but still start from data. It's easy. You just get your bills, you see the kilowatt hours that you're consuming every month, and what you ask even at your landlord or whoever owns the facilities, what type of lighting systems are on, and you replace them with LED. That's the simplest system, but the payback is so high. And so that's very important, a simple step. With waste is the same. You look at the bins you have in your office, and even possibly during 1 week, but if not possible, for 1 day, at the end of the day, you take out all the waste, you put some gloves on, some masks, and you segregate waste, and then you weigh it. And then you're able to understand what is your typical waste characterization. Of course, don't pick a special day where there was a full office with much more people than usual, or a day in which there were some anomalies. So these are simple systems to get that data and then take the decisions, because once you know what types of waste, you're able to know what recyclers you need to call on. So this is very, very simple practice. I'm also happy to